Hello, welcome to this video and welcome to my channel. My name is Emma and today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in September. I did pretty well for myself in September. I am not gonna lie. I definitely had a very tumultuous journey reading this month though. It was weird. So I started off really high, like a bunch of really great books that I definitely really loved back to back. Well, then I got a little sick and then I just started reading a bunch of really bad books back to back. And then it kind of came back up at the end of the month. I had another 5-star and another 4-star at the very end, like the last couple days of September. So in total, I completed 13 books, DNF'd 1, and put 2 off to be finished in October. So first, I'll just mention the books that I'll be carrying over into October. I'll just mention them by name and not really get into it because there's a lot about these books in my reading vlogs, and then they'll be in my October wrap-up. But these books are A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Parry and The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I am adoring and loving everything about both of these books, but they just are both very dense, and so I didn't get through either of them this month. All right, so now to the books that I read. These are in completion order. So first up, we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. As I was starting to get into thrillers, to dip my toe into the water of thrillers, I decided to take a deep dive, but a safe dive, and read the thriller that everybody loves and people have been telling me for years that I would like. And I did love it. I rated Gone Girl 5 stars. Gone Girl, if you don't know, is about a woman who disappears from her home and her husband is accused of the murder, obviously, because as we all know, it's always the husband, but everything is not as it seems. I've read enough mysteries to know that the accused in the premise of the book had to be some kind of red herring in a way, but I still had my suspicions and I was floored with how the book ended up. Gillian Flynn will take everything you think you know about marital dynamics, relationship dynamics, about how well parents know their children. She'll take every assumption that you would ever make and use it against you in order to give you the ultimate surprise. Next up, I read another 5-star, not necessarily because of the quality of the book, but mainly because of the emotional baggage. Baggage is a negatively connotated word. The emotional weight that it carries with it for me. It's The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I absolutely adore the Da Vinci Code movie. I always say that I have been in love with Tom Hanks since I was a very little girl, which is absolutely true. I just say it a lot. And so seeing Tom Hanks in a movie about religious history, art history, secret societies, and everything in between was absolutely riveting. It's one of my favorite movies. It's a movie that you have to sit down like with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and just sit and watch the screen. You can't look away, and I love it for that. It's a great movie, and so when I went into the book, I was hoping that I would love it just as much, and I think because of the continuity between the two, I really adored it. A lot of the dialogue in the movie is literally pulled directly off the pages of the book. The characters sound, feel exactly the same from book to movie. And so I just really loved The Da Vinci Code, and I am not above giving a book 5 stars just because I really loved it. The writing at points in the book got a little boring, like the kind of narration style, but I loved it anyway. I loved it. Next, I listened on audio to the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, my 3rd 5-star of the month. Did I absolutely adore this book? Yes. Was I absolutely horrified by this book? Also yes. Will I ever read it again? That is a no. I keep saying that. I very well may read it again, but the rats and the cockroach scene, if I ever read this book again, I may have to skip it because I seriously had trouble keeping my stomach contents inside my body. I'm not a queasy person. I'm not someone of weak constitution, and I was shaken by some of the moments in this book. The vampire moments, like the active vampire feeding moments, also really shook me to my core, and it was one of the best books I've ever read. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires takes place in the 90s in South Carolina, which is actually my downstairs neighbor. I live in North Carolina. And it surrounds a group of women who are in a true crime book club all together. They're a group of mothers and wives, and there is a man, a mysterious man, who moves in across the street from the main character after the death of his aunt under slightly mysterious circumstances. And then kids from across the tracks from the black neighborhood start going missing, and nobody cares until the white kids start becoming endangered. There's a lot of really wonderful, pointed social commentary in the book. It reminds me a lot of the Atlanta child killings, and I found all of the characters to be incredibly vibrant and well-rounded. Next, I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, and I actually rated Lock Every Door 3.5 stars. Ooh. This was my first Riley Sager book, and I think I was expecting like a super scary thriller. I had just come off of Southern Book Club's Guide, and so I was kind of relieved when it wasn't super scary, but I was also expecting super scary, and so I think that's why it didn't really hit home for me in the way that I would want it to. But I would love to give it another chance. I've now read his prior 2 books to Lock Every Door, Final Girls and Last Time I Lied, and I'll talk about those later, but I would like to give it another shot. Lock Every Door is about a young woman who has lost her boyfriend, her apartment, and her job all in one day, and so she is looking for a place to live and a place to work, and she sees this ad for apartment sitters in this very posh, very legendary apartment building on the Upper West Side of Central Park, I believe. It's on either side of the park, I just don't know which side of the park it's on. So she inquires, she gets the job, but there are a couple of rules. 1, that you can't have any visitors at any time. 2, that you can't spend any night away from the apartment. And 3, that you cannot bother any of the other residents at any time. This book has a significant is it paranormal or is it humanity at its worst dynamic, which I always love that. And now that I'm thinking about it, I really would like to give it another shot because the twist is kind of genius. It just didn't like hit me like I wanted it to, you know? Like I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I didn't like feel it deep down. You know what I mean? But speaking of feeling it deep down, next I read The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor, which I gave 4 stars. The Burning Girls was another one that had me shaking in my boots. Another thriller about is it paranormal or is it human evil? Are you losing your mind or is this actually happening? In The Burning Girls, a single mom who also happens to be a vicar moves with her teenage daughter from her big city church appointment to a small English countryside parish. They have a vacancy at the vicarage because the previous vicar was found hanging in the sanctuary, and people think it's self-inflicted, but there are some who don't agree. And when she moves into the vicarage, she finds an exorcism kit with bloody knives in it, which is just one of the most horrifying things that I've ever heard. I've been reading a lot of books that are, is it paranormal or is it human evil? And I liked The Burning Girls because usually the author will pick one or the other, but in The Burning Girls, CJ Tudor just said yes. Next, hitting you with another thriller, I read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, which was another 5-star. You guys, I'm telling you, I had a great reading month. Like that little dip down at the end was just a blip on the radar compared to the great books that I read at the beginning of this month. In When No One Is Watching, there is a neighborhood that has historically been a Black neighborhood where our main character lives. Her mother is ailing and on her deathbed, and this woman, and our main character is now living alone without her mother in her childhood home when she starts to notice that some of her neighbors who've been there for generations are disappearing without a word, and rich white people are moving in their stead, renovating the condos, taking away the historical value, and pushing the community to become hip and gentrified. It is a harrowing, gut-wrenching story, but it is actually happening. The twist at the end can feel a bit unrealistic for this day and age, but it has happened to real people in past times, which is some of the most horrifying history that you will ever learn. This book is based in both current, present experience and past experience of Black people all coming together to create this bone-chilling thriller. And on a sharp left turn, next I read Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, which was a good solid 4 stars. I love Cassandra Clare. I love the Shadowhunter books. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a little afraid to say it just because I know they're not like the best, but for my heart, they are the best. Chain of Iron is the sequel to Chain of Gold, which is the first book in the sequel series to the Infernal Devices series, which is like Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, Clockwork Princess. So telling you anything about what Chain of Iron is about is a spoiler. Everything in Chain of Iron is a spoiler for something. So I'm just gonna leave it at, I thought it was great. I thought it was better than Chain of Gold. And I am so excited to see where Chain of, what's the third chain? Thorns. Chain of Thorns. I'm so excited to see where Chain of Thorns takes us. My very sad, very disappointed DNF this month was Probable Claws by Rita Mae Brown. I've been wanting to get into cozy mysteries, and the first one that I cracked was literally so bad, I had to put it down in 40 pages. And you guys, that's a big deal because I usually will give books 100 pages to capture my attention. If I don't like it by 100 pages, I'm done. I give pretty much every book 100 pages, but I am not kidding. The writing was so horrendous that I had to put it down. My mom wanted to read it alongside me, and so I consulted her, and she was like, yeah, this is not good. So we collectively, as a pair, decided to put it down, and it was so disappointing. So now we're getting into the disappointing section of this wrap up. So next, I was disappointed by The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones is like a critically acclaimed author, and I don't know if I just read the wrong book. Maybe I feel like I should try another one of his books that maybe has better ratings on Goodreads, but I'm really apprehensive. Like, I don't want to waste my time. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars because I didn't think it was objectively a bad book necessarily. I just thought this is really, really not for me. And I see some quality elements here. Like, I see that he is a craftsman of words. Like, this is a good writer. I just don't think it's a good book. And it's such a shame because after reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires and When No One Is Watching, which are both thrillers that comment on the place and space and experience of Black people in America, I was so excited and so intrigued to get a thriller on the perspective of Native American people living in America in this day and age. I did learn some things from his writing about how the ancient Native American cultures have sort of morphed into something new in this day and age, and somewhat of what Native American life is like. There wasn't a ton in there about that, but there were some pieces here and there where I could piece together kind of a skeletal picture of what things are like. But this book just felt like a fever dream and not in a good way. But yeah, The Only Good Indians just felt disorganized. It didn't hit the mark. It was like creepy for no reason. Like, I was creeped out. There was like nothing connecting the creepiness to anything. There was nothing grounding it. It was just like, this is creepy. Speaking of creepy, for an even lower rating of 2 stars, next I listened to Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink, which I was so disappointed by because I am a huge fan of the Welcome to Night Vale podcast. Alice Isn't Dead was originally a podcast series on the Night Vale network, and when I found that out about like 85% of the way through the book, everything made so much sense because the pace, the structure, everything was so weird about it. nothing made sense. Like, everything was given the wrong attention, and the things that should have been given attention were ignored. And then there was like too much attention on the wrong aspects of the storytelling, and it was just very strange, and I did not like it. For a little uptick before we go to the lowest of the low, next I read Final Girls by Riley Sager, which is Riley Sager's first book, and so far I've read his first 3 books. I still have his last 2 to go, but I've read his first 3 books, and his first one is my favorite out of all of them. I don't know what that's about. I don't know, I think it might be the premise, just like is so captivating and so scary to me. But Final Girls is about the last girls that are left at the end of a massacre in like a horror movie. And in the universe of this book, there are 3 real life final girls who have a relationship with each other. They band together and support each other after their tragedies. And then one of them shows up dead. It seems that she has taken her own life, but there are some, once again, who aren't so convinced. And so the other 2 women kind of come together and everything goes insane immediately. Even though it was a bit simplistic at times, I really enjoyed the exploration of inner darkness based in trauma. I think it was kind of good that that exploration was a bit simplistic, because it was such a twisty-turny story that I think if it had been much more intricate, it would have been weighed down. And I found that part of the story where the main character was kind of evaluating, is this how I've always been, or am I this way because of my abuser, the guy who killed all my friends? I don't want to be this way because of him. I don't want him to have affected my life, but what is actually going on with me? I felt like if that discussion was super deep and intricate, it would have weighed the story down and not allowed it to twist and turn as much as it did. But I loved Final Girls, and I gave it 4.5 stars. But speaking of simplistic and twists and turns, next is the final bad book that I just literally hated so much that I yelled in a restaurant about it. To be fair, I had also had a margarita on an empty stomach, but it's The Maidens by Michaelides. I gave this 1 star. I hated it literally so much, and when I went home to visit my parents last weekend, I think, I went out to dinner with them. They have 2 friends that they go out to dinner with every Friday night, and so I went with them, and someone mentioned The Silent Patient by Michaelides, and she was like, "Have you read that, Emma?" And I said, "No, but I did read his most recent book, and it was hot garbage." And I just went off in the restaurant, and I'm a little embarrassed about it, but it's fine. I will say no more about this. I will not dignify this with any further discussion. I've actually also heard from people that The Silent Patient was a bit forgettable, so I think I'll just be avoiding Michaelides from here on out. We're coming up on the end here, guys. Stay with me. My last new favorite for this wrap-up was The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This book is everything that I want in a novel. This book has traditional witchcraft, it has demon women, it has a mysterious forest, it has family dynamics, both found family and blood family. This book has themes of toxic loyalty, toxic religion, religious exploitation. The main character is so smart, and she's sharp as a tack, and she spends the entire book working in her mind with such limited information. She's trying to figure out what happened to her mother. Her mother spent the entirety of her pregnancy with Emmanuel, that's the main character's name, in the dark wood, apparently communing with demons. And then she came out changed, was never the same, and then died in childbirth. But Emmanuel knows that she's been treated differently since day 1 because of her mother's time spent in the dark wood. So she sets out to figure out what the heck is going on and just uncovers a plethora more of information. And this is one of those books that I absolutely adored, and like honestly, the only fault that I found with it was at the beginning of the 3rd act, the writing drug a little bit in terms of pace. That was the only fault I could find with it. But it's one of those books that I loved, and like there's a ton of people on Goodreads who hated it. but like whatever. I don't have a Goodreads, but I do like snoop on Goodreads and read reviews for books after I finish them. But I don't get why people hate this because I thought this was genius. The melding of pagan deity worship with puritanical Christian religion, they just went together so well. This religion that Miss Henderson created just set the backdrop and the foundation for everything that went on in this book, and it really shows you how religion takes over your life, because everyone's reference point for everything in this book is not any kind of internal intuition, I know this is right, I know this is wrong. It is all entirely steeped in this religion. And it shows a really good example, a fictional example of how religion can take over your life. And if that is a good religion, then great. I guess it should take over your life. But if it's a toxic religion, then it means that everything you do is full of toxicity. So anyway, I didn't know that I was gonna have that outburst about the religious themes in this book. But anyway, so yeah, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I am so excited for the sequel. It's gonna be a duology, so there'll just be one more book coming out in December. And the last book that I read this month, yet another witchcraft book, it was Time's Convert by Deborah Harkness, which is the new installment in the All Souls universe, which is A Discovery of Witches, all of those books about Diana Bishop and Matthew de Clermont. Deborah Harkness has released a new installment, a fourth book in the series. It is a standalone, but you do need to read the trilogy to read Time's Convert. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I will just say that Time's Convert surrounds a couple who are side characters in the All Souls trilogy, as one of them becomes a vampire and they finally mate as vampires and marry, as well as the main couple in All Souls as their lives continue after the end of the third book. So it's really just another installment and a continuation of the story. It is a lot more like chill though. Like in the third book, things got really, really intense, but Time's Convert is not intense like that at all. It's a little gory sometimes because we have someone like actively becoming a vampire, but it's still beautifully written and kind of sugar-coated a little bit like Deborah Harkness likes to do. It really fleshed out the world and the internal lives of some of the characters in the original trilogy, and so even though when it first came out, I just did not want to read it, and I don't know why, but I'm so glad that I did, and I gave it 4 stars. So that is all for my September wrap-up. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please leave a like and a comment about any of these books that you have read. If you shared opinions or you totally disagree, please let me know. I'd love to know. But also feel free to subscribe if you would like to hang out with me some more. But I hope that you are doing well. I hope that if you're not, it gets better soon. And I hope that you love what you're reading. Goodbye!